All right, let's jump right into this explainer. I want you to picture a scenario, and I guarantee literally every single one of us has been here. You're walking down the street and you are completely, undeniably alone. There's absolutely no one around for blocks. Suddenly, your toe catches on a crack in the sidewalk. You stumble, maybe your arms flail a little bit, but you catch yourself. You recover instantly. You look around and, yep, you confirm nobody saw it, nobody will ever know. And yet somehow, despite the complete isolation, your face just got a little warm. You're embarrassed.
Now, that is kind of bizarre when you stop and really think about it, right? Why on earth would your body trigger this intense social panic when there is absolutely no one around to judge you? I mean, we usually think of evolution as this incredibly efficient process that fine-tunes our biology over millions of years. So you'd think evolution would have patched out this apparent glitch by now. Why waste the energy on a social reaction when you're literally the only person on the street?
Well, here's the totally counterintuitive reality we're going to unpack today. Your brain? It's not malfunctioning. It's not a bug in your biological software. Actually, this reaction is doing something incredibly specific. And I promise you, understanding the mechanics behind this is going to completely change how you view those random moments of embarrassment forever.
What's absolutely wild is how perfectly synchronized this reaction is. Let's define what embarrassment actually is, biologically speaking. It's not just some mild flavor of fear. It is its own distinct full-body response. Researchers, including UC Berkeley psychologist Dasher Keltner, have actually mapped out this unique physical signature. It always involves a quick gaze down or away, a nervous smile, touching your face, and then that telltale blush hitting within just 1 to 2 seconds. And here's the really fascinating part. This identical "please pretend this didn't happen" face appears across wildly different cultures globally. From dense urban cities to totally isolated communities, humans everywhere independently arrived at this exact same sequence of physical movements.
So here's the kicker. If embarrassment was purely a social performance, like just a show you put on specifically for an audience, it shouldn't happen when you're completely alone. But it does, all the time. Because of this, evolutionary psychologists like Matthew Feinberg argue that this emotion didn't evolve just as a reaction to people watching you. Instead, it evolved as an internal social alarm system. It operates completely on its own, completely separate from whether real people are actually standing right in front of you.
To understand why we even need this alarm, let's move into Part 1, the evolutionary stakes, or survival of the likable. Let's do a quick time travel back to early human history.
See, the gap between how we live right now and how our brains evolved is massive. Today, we live with modern anonymity. You can embarrass yourself by completely dropping a jar of pickles in front of a stranger at a massive grocery store and reasonably assume you're never ever going to see that person again. But ancient tribal life? Totally different story. You lived your entire life among a tight-knit group of roughly 30 to 150 people. Every single person knew you. They remembered what you did. A single mistake could ruin your reputation, and by extension, your access to food, protection, and mates. There were literally no fresh starts. There was no packing up and moving to a new city. You had one reputation for life.
Because the stakes of losing your social standing were quite literally life or death, your brain developed a hypersensitive defense mechanism. We call this the smoke detector theory. Think about the smoke detector in your kitchen. It's designed to be so incredibly sensitive that it might go off when you just burn a piece of toast, right? It triggers a false positive because the alternative, missing an actual raging fire, is fatal. Well, your brain flinching at even the mere possibility of embarrassment works the exact same way. It was highly useful to have an alarm that went off way too often, because in ancient times, a tiny, unnoticed social fire could burn your entire reputation to the ground before you even realized it was happening.
But wait, how does this actually translate to the physical manifestation of this alarm, the blush? I mean, we know why we feel embarrassed, but why turn beet red? Does the physical reddening of the face actually serve a real purpose? Because on the surface, it seems like a terrible biological design. You mess up, and your face literally turns into a glowing neon sign highlighting your failure to everyone around you.
Well, it turns out that neon sign is a superpower. It's real-time damage control. Psychologist Corinne Dyke conducted some really counterintuitive research showing that visibly blushing actually works completely in your favor. When observers see someone physically turn red after making an awkward mistake, they actually perceive that person more positively. They judge them as way more trustworthy, and they forgive them much faster than someone who makes a mistake and just keeps a totally neutral, unbothered face.
I just absolutely love this summary of Dyke's findings. A blush is basically your face issuing a public apology before your mouth has even caught up. Think about it. When you turn red, it signals genuine, uncontrollable remorse. You literally cannot fake a blush. It tells the tribe, hey, I know the rules, I know I broke them, and I feel terrible about it, without a single word being spoken. It's an instant mechanism to restore trust in a really fragile social ecosystem.
Okay, but how does all this ancient history connect directly back to you, completely alone on that empty street? Let's get into part 2, the invisible audience, and why you are never truly alone.
The answer lies in something called self-conscious emotion regulation. Your brain is essentially a supercomputer, and one of its primary background tasks is running a constant, never-ending simulation of social judgment. You've built this complex mental model of how other people react based on a lifetime of social interactions. Essentially, your brain has installed a permanent, invisible audience right there in the theater of your mind. And even when you are physically alone, that audience never leaves their seats. They are always watching, and they can trigger a full-body embarrassment response all on their own.
Now, looking at the science, there is a bit of debate among researchers about exactly how much of this is hardwired biology versus learned culture. The universal physical symptoms, the blush, the gaze down, those point heavily to deep evolutionary roots. However, the specific triggers, what actually counts as an embarrassing act in the first place, vary wildly depending on the culture you grew up in. But here's the thing, regardless of whether the trigger is hardwired or culturally learned, the physical result on that empty street remains a very real automatic reaction that just fires off completely on its own.
And this invisible audience explains another incredibly common, deeply frustrating human experience, the dreaded 11:47 p.m. cringe. You know exactly the one I'm talking about. You're lying in bed, finally drifting off to sleep, and out of nowhere your internal alarm fires a massive alert.
It happens because your brain maintains a permanent archive of awkwardness. It suddenly decides to pull up a fully indexed, decade-old memory of something embarrassing you said back in high school, something literally nobody else even remembers. Your invisible audience decides to just replay the tape, triggering that exact same flush of embarrassment for absolutely no productive reason. It is literally like being subscribed to a cursed nightly newsletter that you just can't ever opt out of. So, the next time you're lying in bed cringing or walking alone and feeling your face heat up, I really want you to reframe the experience. You are running an ancient survival system. That frustratingly warm rush is the exact same biological software that kept your ancestors thriving in tight-knit groups where a good reputation meant absolutely everything. It's a system designed to protect you, acting exactly as it was programmed to do millennia ago. So, let's bring this whole explainer full circle, right back to where we started. You, the sidewalk, the empty street, that trip that absolutely nobody saw.
The warmth in your face in that exact moment, it isn't a glitch, it isn't a mistake. The alarm just went off, just in case. Your ancient smoke detector is simply doing what it has done since before human language even existed. It detected a potential threat to your social standing, and it fired the warning flares to keep you safe.
Which leaves us with this really fascinating perspective shift. The next time you trip in an empty parking lot, or lie awake cringing at a decade-old memory, and your invisible audience makes you blush completely alone, instead of feeling annoyed, will you finally thank them for keeping you alive? It turns out our deepest moments of cringe are actually just the echoes of our oldest protectors. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.